In 1959, 62-year-old Pearl Kongsle had been a widow for a decade. Her husband had been Captain Guy Kongsle, a veteran Puget Sound master mariner who had been the deputy commissioner of the United States Maritime Commission in Seattle. The couple had no children. In 1955, Pearl had purchased a newly built brick one-story duplex in West Seattle, in a quiet neighborhood near Lincoln Park and a large retirement community. On September 2, 1959, Pearl had dinner at the Alki Homestead restaurant with her next-door neighbor, 54-year-old Alberta Bowman, who had been recently widowed. Alberta told Pearl that they should not order dessert after their early dinner, because she had prepared an apple pie that she would bake when she got home. Around 8:45 that night, Alberta walked over to Pearl's house with the pie, fresh from the oven. When she climbed the stairs to Pearl's front door, she saw a brown paper, quart-sized liquor bag with a straw protruding out of its top, sitting at the beginning of the walkway at the top of the stairs that led to the front door. She was going to stop to pick it up, but then decided to go to the door to tell Pearl about it instead. One of Pearl's friends, Edith Friedman, had also come over to see her, and was in Pearl's living room when Alberta arrived with the apple pie and the news of the mysterious bag on the walkway. Pearl went outside to investigate. After looking at the bag for a moment, she began to lean down to get a better look at it. Edith called out to Pearl, warning her not to touch it, but Pearl picked up the bag. When she did, the bag exploded violently. The explosion was strong enough to create a foot-wide crater in the cement, buckle the home's roof, and shatter the windows in nearby houses. Alberta had still been on the front porch when the explosion occurred. She and Pearl were both knocked off their feet. Alberta was able to crawl inside to the telephone to call for help. She and Edith, who had been inside, suffered flash burns and injuries from broken glass. Pearl was killed instantly due to extensive and catastrophic injuries to her entire body. Pearl is believed to be the first civilian to be killed by a booby trap in the history of Seattle. A massive investigation quickly began. The Seattle Police Department had 16 detectives work on the case full-time. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover made the FBI laboratory, as well as FBI agents, available to the Seattle Police Department. Army explosives experts from Fort Lawton also aided in the investigation. However, they had difficulty determining the components of the bomb. Their strongest theory was that the bomb had been made with nitroglycerin extracted from dynamite. They could not identify a triggering device amongst what was left of the bomb. An expert from the ATF who reviewed the case in 2016 described the device that killed Pearl as a victim-operated, electric-initiated bomb made from dynamite. It is believed that when Pearl picked up the paper bag, she initiated a mercury switch, which caused the bomb to detonate. Both mercury and dynamite were relatively easy to acquire in 1959, so the known components of the bomb did not narrow down the potential suspect pool. Pearl had no known enemies, and investigators struggled to identify potential motives for the murder. However, there were doubts that Pearl had been the bomb's intended victim at all. Pearl had just sold her house and was scheduled to move out less than a week after she was killed. This raised the question of if the killer struck while they still knew where Pearl lived, or if the next owner was the target. A 1949 Chevrolet, with 3 young men riding inside of it, had been seen speeding away from the scene just after the explosion. This raised concerns that the bombing was meant to be a youthful prank, with the perpetrators not realizing just how powerful their bomb was, or an act of random violence that would make identifying the killers almost impossible. However, the bomber would have had to carry the bomb a minimum of 50 feet from the street and up a flight of stairs to reach Pearl's house, making it a poor choice for a random target. Pearl was also not the only occupant of her home. She had a 54-year-old boarder named William J. Myers, who had not been home at the time of the bombing because he had been admitted to the Veterans Administration Hospital because of a heart condition. He owned a golden retriever, and other residents of the neighborhood complained that the dog was always barking. The dog's chain was just long enough for the dog to reach the spot where the bomb had been placed. Pearl's extended family had been plagued by mysterious bad fortune in 1959, although there is no evidence connecting all of the incidents. Pearl's murder was the third mysterious death and second incidence of unexplained explosives arriving at a Kongsle family home within 6 months. Her brother-in-law, Elmer Kongsle, lived on Lake Serene in Snohomish County, Washington, with his wife. Their daughter Charlotte lived nearby. On August 13, 1959, almost exactly a month before Pearl's murder, Charlotte discovered 3 sticks of dynamite scattered throughout her parents' front lawn. Sheriff's deputies searched the rest of the property, but never found any other components that could have been used to set off the dynamite, and its origins were never discovered. This incident occurred just 4 months after the unexplained deaths of Elmer's oldest daughter, Betty Jean, and her husband, Major Robert Douglas Baker. The couple had died within 3 hours of one another at Madigan Army Hospital in Fort Lewis on April 25, 1959. Pierce County Coroner Dr. Frank James determined that Betty Jean and Robert had been poisoned. Their deaths had originally been attributed to botulism. The couple had recently returned from a trip to Mexico and brought various foods back with them. However, botulism was ruled out after an investigation by the Food and Drug Administration and the Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department. All of the food products in the Baker's home were analyzed and tested on animal subjects, but nothing was found. Furthermore, none of Betty Jean and Robert's 3 children, who also lived in the house, ever became sick. Samples of the couple's brain tissue and stomach contents were examined at Walter Reed Army Hospital and Letterman Army Hospital, but they found that the lethal substance could have been any one of more than 5,000 compounds. Like Pearl's murder, the deaths of the Bakers remain a mystery. Despite hundreds of interviews and polygraphs, as well as thorough scientific examination of the available evidence, Pearl's murder remains one of Seattle's oldest and coldest cases, despite the efforts of cold case investigator Detective Mike Szynski. Wayne Greavette spent much of his life working in the food and beverage packaging industry, either working for manufacturers or repairing equipment as a self-employed machinist. His work required him to travel a lot, but in 1996, 42-year-old Wayne was looking to use his extensive knowledge to start a business that would be very close to home. Wayne and his wife Diane had purchased more than 100 acres of property in Moffat, Ontario that summer. There was a spring on the property, and Wayne had plans to refurbish a barn on the property so that he could start a business bottling water from the spring. The couple's 2 children, Justin and Danielle, also lived on the property. On December 12, 1996, 21-year-old Justin brought in the family's mail. There had been a package addressed to his father in the mailbox. Since it was so close to Christmas, this did not seem unusual. Justin brought the package inside to the family's living room. His sister was not home, but his parents and his uncle were there. Justin gave the package to his father. It had been packaged inside a wine bottle box and contained a letter and a rectangular Duracell floating lantern flashlight. The letter claimed to be from someone looking to do business with Wayne and had a postscript reading, "Didn't realize you had moved. Had some trouble finding you. Have a very Merry Christmas, and may you never have to buy another flashlight." While his father opened the letter, Justin grabbed the flashlight and tried to turn it on, but no light came from the flashlight. He tried to open it, but it appeared to be glued shut. Wayne took the flashlight to look at it, and then put it down. When he picked it up again, he pressed the button to try to turn it on again. The flashlight exploded, killing Wayne instantly. His body absorbed the majority of the force of the bomb, and the living room was not a fully enclosed space, as it was open to other parts of the house. As such, even though Wayne's son was sitting next to him, he received only minor burns. Wayne's wife and brother had been across the room, but were not seriously injured. The flashlight had contained a homemade bomb filled with a mining explosive and roofing nails. The explosives would have created a large enough blast to kill Wayne, even without the nails. The killer was clearly a coward, as they had killed Wayne from a distance, and cruel, as they did not care if anyone else got hurt in the explosion. Police did have a lot of evidence to investigate. The flashlight obviously did not survive the explosion, but the wine bottle box it was mailed in and the letter that accompanied it did. The UPC had been cut off of the box, making it difficult to track, but the letter provided several leads. While the letter named people Wayne did know, it had been signed with a fake name and provided a fake address. The letter had been typed on a manual Smith Corona typewriter with a rare font type which was only used on 2% of that particular model. There was also a distinctive flaw on the daisy wheel of the typewriter used to type the note that left a small slash after every period it typed. Investigators hoped that this would help them track down the specific typewriter used to type the note, but it did not. Hairs were found in the packaging materials used to send the bomb, but police have not publicly disclosed if DNA testing of these hairs has been attempted. A month before Wayne was killed, 2 men had gone to the post office in Acton, Ontario, inquiring about Wayne's new address. Composite sketches of the men were created, but they have never been identified. In the years since Wayne was killed, investigators, journalists, and Wayne's family have identified a number of potential motives for the murder. Wayne previously had a bitter falling out with a former business partner. He was obviously considered as a potential suspect. He also claimed that a number of customers Wayne had worked for after they parted ways had told him that Wayne had overcharged them or otherwise treated them unprofessionally. There was a lot of interest in developing spring water companies in Canada at the time, so Wayne may have been killed to eliminate new competition in the industry. Wayne's family also learned after his death that he had engaged in a number of extramarital affairs. Filmmaker and journalist David Ridgen, working on a piece for the CBC, interviewed an anonymous source who claimed that the bomb had been arranged by a local outlaw motorcycle club. Despite the large number of potential leads and an extensive investigation, Wayne's killer has never been identified. Police have not narrowed their focus and continue to pursue all available avenues of investigation. Wayne's family still hopes that anyone with information will come forward so that they may finally have answers. They have remained active in their own efforts to solve the case. Bill Walker and Javier Martinez Adame never met, but the 2 men had a lot in common. They lived just a few miles away from each other, each just outside of Moses Lake, Washington. They both loved their families and did whatever they could to help them. They were both loving fathers and grandfathers. Both of them were known for helping anyone in need and for being skilled with their hands. Bill, a retired electrician, could fix just about anything, and Javier had a green thumb as well as a knack for playing musical instruments. While Bill and Javier had only these broad connections, their lives became mysteriously intertwined in 2008. On August 2nd, Bill's extended family was in town for a baby shower for his granddaughter Heather. Heather was having a boy, and Bill was looking forward to teaching him how to fish. Bill's wife had left that morning to go antiquing with some family members before the baby shower, while Bill stayed behind to putter around in his workshop. At some point that morning, Bill found a boat battery charger somewhere on his property. The exact circumstances of him finding it are unknown. What is known is that Bill took it inside his workshop and plugged it in. When he did so, the charger exploded, tearing a hole in the workshop's wall and killing 69-year-old Bill instantly. He died of extreme trauma to his chest and neck. Just 10 hours later, another explosion rocked a home less than 6 miles away. Javier's girlfriend had found a police scanner in a grocery bag in the driveway earlier in the day and had brought it up to the porch. On August 3rd, just after midnight, Javier brought it inside and placed it on his kitchen counter. It exploded. Javier was able to use his body to shield his girlfriend from the blast, saving her life. He died of extensive wounds to his chest and stomach. Javier was 53 and had grown up as the 4th of 9 children. He had been injured in a car accident many years before his death, which left him unable to work long shifts. He therefore mainly worked odd jobs where he could control his schedule and pain levels to support himself and his family. For many years, he owned and operated an appliance repair company. The FBI, ATF, and explosives experts from the U.S. Army were all involved in the investigation and processing the scenes. The boat battery charger and police scanner had both contained improvised explosive devices. Both bombs were clearly intended to kill. The 2 pipe bombs were so sophisticated that investigators believed they had to have been made by the same individual. However, they have never been able to find any connection between Bill and Javier, much less one that would lead to them being targeted by the same person. This fact has led investigators to conclude that Bill Walker was simply a victim of mistaken identity, and that the bomb that killed him was not intended for him. They do not believe Javier could have been the man killed by mistake because he had a criminal record. However, Javier's family is upset by this conclusion. He was arrested for drug possession in the late 1990s, but never for manufacturing or selling drugs. He never had any ties to gangs or other such criminal enterprises in the drug world. His associates were instead the neighbors he hosted at his famous barbecues, and friends he welcomed into his home when they had nowhere to go. He also had no history of making or working with explosives. Javier and Bill's families now have the desire for justice for their loved one and ongoing fear in common. Members of both families report feeling anxiety when packages are delivered to their homes, fearing that they too may be killed by something seemingly so innocuous. They all hope that anyone with information about the case will come forward so that the murders can finally be solved.